even if you're a stay-at-home mom or a homeschool mom, you have incredible influence over your kids. Dads, you have influence. Whether you're a business owner and you have just a couple employees or 300 employees, you are an influencer. You're a leader. If you're a student, you might think, oh, when I get older and I graduate college, then I'll be a leader. No, you're a leader now. Retired people, they think, well, I ran a big Fortune 500 company. I'm retired now. And, I'll come to church once in a while. I'm like, no. You're still a leader. In fact, the church needs you now more than ever, because not only do you have leadership abilities and skills, but you have lifelong experience in it.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Midweek Moment. Today we get to talk about leadership with Pastor Robert. Now, for those of you who are thinking, well, I'm not a leader or I don't quite have leadership authority, this is for you because you have a lot of leadership, more than you think you have. So great to have you on this episode, Pastor Robert.
Great to be here, Pastor Isaac.
Well, wonderful. Let's dive into this topic of leadership. We have a basic definition that we've adopted when it comes to leadership. Leadership is not title, it's not position, it's influence. Talk about that. What is influence and what is not influence?
Well, influence, I believe, is a gift from God. I think God gives us this gift that we get to influence other people. And I think at its core, influence is about how we develop people, how we help them to think and act. I think the development idea is very closely related to a church word, which is discipleship. So influence is about developing people and helping them think and helping them act, helping them to be better leaders and, better Christ followers. What it is not, well, also too, let me say this, influence also is not only the gift that God gives to us, but it's something we get to give to other people on behalf of other people. So the poor, the marginalized, we get to use our influence to help other people. So it's not just for me. That influence isn't just for me and what I want. It's to develop other people, but it's also to help other people. What it's not simply is not to serve myself. My influence isn't so that I can have a better car, a better house, a better job, a better position in life. It's not self-serving. Influence is to be used from a godly perspective, is to be used on behalf of other people.
That's so great. That's so helpful to understand that we all carry that influence, and leadership is influence. This past weekend, you gave a great opening message on this series, Uncommon Leader, about leadership, and you talked about the myths of leadership. What is by far the number one myth to leadership that you hear all the time?
Well, there's a bunch I think rank way up there on number one. The biggest one that we tackle in this weekend's message is that somehow leaders, good leaders are born and not developed, which is absolutely not true. I think every leader can be born. Certainly people have different gifts and skills innate when they're born, but every leader is developed and discipled from within. And it's a journey. It's a process over time. When I was growing up in my teens and in my early 20s, I was not a good leader. I was a bad influence on people. We talk about leadership's influence, right? I wasn't a good influence. I was playing in a heavy metal band and in the drug culture, and that was not a good influence to other people. They'd look at my life, and I was hopefully they wouldn't emulate that. As I got older and became a Christ follower, when I gave my life to Jesus, I was a young leader. Still very much struggling with pride as well. That's a lifelong journey, by the way. We all struggle with our whole lives, but I was definitely in the raw and still self-serving, and people were a means to an end still in my early ministry years. But as I grew older, I think just as you mature, you begin to see everything through a different lens. And so that journey and process for me when it comes to your influence and your leadership is that you begin to really see it how Christ sees it, which is that which is another myth. People think that, I'm the leader, so you need to serve me. That's an inverted pyramid in a Christ perspective when he said you want to be great among everyone, you need to serve everyone. And so the higher you get up in an organization, you really need to be more of a servant to everyone. You realize your time's not your own. Your decisions aren't your own anymore. You can certainly make decisions, but you have other people that if you're in a transformational style of leadership where you're, wanting people to be part of the team, it's just a whole different mindset. And, you have to develop into that. It's intentional and it's lifelong. You never arrive at, hey, I'm now a great leader.
Yeah. Well, you certainly model that really well in just leading our organization in particular. By the way, if you want to check out that message, The link is going to be in the description. It's a great one to learn about leadership. And like Pastor Robert mentioned, just the inverted model of leadership that Jesus, probably the greatest leader on this planet, exemplified. You talked a little bit about your leadership journey. When did you discover that you had influence and the power of that influence? What was the light bulb moment for you?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll put it this way. It was as I was serving Jesus and doing things, I began to see that just humbly taking the words of Christ and sharing them. Obviously, I'm in full-time ministry. And so whether I'm doing something in ministry or just at a restaurant talking to somebody, as I shared my faith with people and shared my leadership journey, and again, it's about authenticity, like when you share your God story. When you come across to people that you've arrived, they don't want to hear that. But when you're authentic and you share what you've gone through, that's influence. You're influencing because you're sharing your God story in an authentic way. What happens is then the light bulb goes on for other people and it brings life change. And that's a humbling process because you're not the one doing the life change. They're not even your words, they're Jesus's words, but he somehow uses your personal story and his power of the word of God. He puts those two and meshes them together in a bag, and out comes somebody's life is changed. So your influence was part of the process in changing somebody else's life. I just got back from family camp up in Forest Home over Memorial Day weekend, and it's just humbling. You know, I was able to baptize 2 people. After one of the messages, I gave a response where I asked if anybody, if you don't know Jesus and you want to give your life for the first time, 10 people raised their hand. That is a beautiful and humbling thing to see because you realize God used you. You can get arrogant about it, but you keep an attitude of humility, and you realize God used you to bring about change, your influence to bring lifelong, eternal change in other humans. I don't know what gets better than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people don't realize how much influence they really have. Stay-at-home parents,
oh, absolutely,
teachers. The fact that people go to you for wisdom or they want to listen to your words whenever you speak, that's influence.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because so many times we might think, well, I'm not a leader, but mom, even if you're a stay-at-home mom or a homeschool mom, you have incredible influence over your kids. Dads, you have influence. Whether you're a business owner and you have just a couple employees or 300 employees, you are an influencer. You're a leader. If you're a student, you might think, oh, when I get older and I graduate college, then I'll be a leader. No, you're a leader now. Retired people, they think, well, I ran a big Fortune 500 company. I'm retired now. And, I'll come to church once in a while. I'm like, no. You're still a leader. In fact, the church needs you now more than ever because not only do you have leadership abilities and skills, but you have a lifelong experience in it. So it's just seeing things through a different lens.
That's so great. I always like watching those singing reality game shows and hearing stories behind the contestants. They come up and, 8 out of 10 times they talk about how they learn how to sing in church. And I think, our heart as church leaders is we would love to hear leaders come out and then tell their leadership story and go, yeah, I learned about leadership through the local church. And I know that's your heart. That's certainly our heart.
Absolutely. And that's a safe place to learn leadership. Obviously, you can learn leadership on the job in different places, but putting into practice, servant leadership and godly leadership certainly crosses all bounds. But the church is a great place to learn that. You could become a life group leader. So you're leading that group of people. You're pastoring them. You're not just a life group. You're their pastor. You can, volunteer in student ministry or children's ministry or on the tech team, the worship team, the hospitality team. All that can help you learn in an environment where people love you and care about you and can help you develop that leadership muscle and that influence muscle, which it is like that. A few years back, I was dabbling in CrossFit, which is really difficult. And I realized, man, I need to build these muscles. Leadership's like that.
Really good analogy. Let's do a fun question.
Okay.
So outside of Jesus, who's a leader that's really impacted you, and what about them was so impactful in your leadership journey?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that have impacted my life through the years, but I would say the one who's had the most influence would be our former lead pastor, Pastor Mike Quinn. He's our legacy pastor now. When I came back I was born and raised in San Diego, but when I came back, I'd moved away for a few years and I had a crash and burn in my life. And most life, trajectories aren't these perfect lines. There's, if you're honest, you got these kind of circles where God's bringing you about and discipling you. And that was true for me. I moved back in 2020, 2000, not 2020. That'd be like last year in the pandemic. 21 years ago, in 2000, I moved back to San Diego. And I had just come off of, really kind of some bad, horrific things in my life, and was kind of starting over. And I started coming to the church, and Pastor Mike immediately said, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And he took me aside and he said, "Listen, I shared my story and some of the leadership things I had done in ministry." And he said, "God's not done with you." He said, "The gift and the call of God in your life is irrevocable. Like, God doesn't just change his mind because you had a hiccup." And so he just encouraged me to just stay with it. And so that influence, he took his optimism and his faith and hope and put it onto me. You talk about influence, right? Because I kind of didn't have it. I was like, I guess I'm here and I'm going to do some things. And he's like, "No, let me just take all my optimism, hope, faith, and put it onto you because you need it right now." And then it became my own again. And God just, through those years, has done amazing things in my life. And, it was him speaking into me. That influence, I don't know if I'd be here today.
It's amazing. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since leadership is influence, let's get practical.
Mm-hmm.
What are some practical ways we can steward that influence so that we can become better leaders?
Well, I think the first thing is appreciate your influence. So appreciate your God-given gifts, talents, abilities, who you are, how God's wired you. It's different than somebody next to you. It's different than, your spouse. God has wired you in a certain way. So to appreciate the type of influence that you have and who you have in your life to influence. It's not the same as everybody else. I think that's the other. The second then is to apply that influence. So to apply that influence, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. To be active, just to not be stagnant. I know last year with the pandemic, a lot of people were kind of just hanging out at home. We had to. Those things are changing now. People are out. I would say, hey, get back involved. If you're not coming to church, come to church. If you're not serving, get serving. You need to use it. You need to apply your influence or you'll lose it. So it's not only appreciating how you're wired and what God's called you to do and the purpose he's called you to and your leadership and influence, but then to apply that influence and then to amplify your influence. That's 3 A's, really easy to remember.
Really good.
So appreciate, apply, and amplify. I think 2 of the reasons why you would amplify your influence is ministry and mission. Ministry and mission. Helping people find Jesus and then helping those people find their purpose in life. Ephesians 1:11, it's a verse we quote all the time at Newbreak, and that is, it's in Christ we find out who we are and what we're living for. So it's your ministry and your mission. So amplify your influence.
That's really good. Well, that was really helpful, the 3 A's, especially at the end. Thank you for sharing your leadership journey. We're going to be in this series for the next 3 or 4 weeks on leadership, and I'm super excited about it. And so we encourage you, join us online every Sunday, 9 a.m. or 10:45. That's what we're going to be talking about the whole month, leadership. Also, if you do get a chance, this is a great resource that we are recommending that all of us journey together so that we can become better leaders. I've heard it said, everyone wins when the leader gets better. And so pick up this book, Lead Like Jesus. There's going to be a link in the description as well.
Hey, by the way, it'd be really cool with this book. Like, you could lead a life group with this book as your kind of way to do it. So if you're thinking about maybe leading a life group, you could just take this book and over the next 12 weeks, take your life group through it. It's just a great, idea I just had. So sorry to interrupt you.
That's awesome. It's a great, super easy read, very practical, and we love it. And so we think you will as well. So thank you for joining us. If you liked this video, if this was helpful, hit that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that you'll be notified of content just like this whenever it drops. Until next time, God bless you. We will see you soon.